In Argentina, demonstrations in Jujuy call for the governor's resignation and the annulment of a constitutional reform. In Russia, the defense ministry reported that 2 Ukrainian attempts to break the lines were successfully repelled in the Zaporozhye region. And the African Union condemned the extremist attack against a school in Uganda that left 42 people dead. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Argentina, demonstrations in the northeastern province of Jujuy demand the governor's resignation and the revocation of a constitutional reform. The social movements are mainly promoted by indigenous peoples who demand the immediate resignation of Governor Gerardo Morales. So far, the police has arrested over 40 people, including a lawmaker and a journalist on the scene, covering the demonstrations. The protests came as a result of the new constitutional reform implemented by the local legislature, promoted by Morales' government, punishing and restricting social protests. Brazilian President Luis Inácio da Silva entered his 6th month in office with approval ratings on a steady pace. According to a survey from the Datafolha Institute, the Brazilian head of state entered his 6th month in office with a 37% approval rating and 27% disapproval rating. In the survey, more than 2,000 people were interviewed to know their opinion of the first 5 months of President Lula da Silva's administration, which they rated as positive. During his first month in office, Lula rescued multiple social programs pre-established during his first term. The leader of the Workers' Party proposed to rebuild the South American nation and promoted a change in the fuel price policy. In this sense, many experts agree that despite tensions with Congress that have hindered some of his projects, the image of President Lula da Silva remains intact before the people. In Brazil, at least 13 people have died while over 16 remain missing so far as a result of an extratropical cyclone that has affected over 30 municipalities in Rio Grande do Sul state on the southernmost point of Brazil. The meteorological event originated in the Atlantic Ocean during this week and since Thursday night has been responsible for uninterrupted heavy rains and winds along the south and southeast coast of the country. According to local authorities, over 2,000 people have lost their homes, while the number of evacuees exceeds 3,000. The hurricane's path along the coast of the region that borders with Argentina and Uruguay has left a trail of destruction, causing landslides, floods, power outages in thousands of homes, as well as the collapse of some bridges, which hinders the work of rescue teams in the area. On Saturday, Mexican health authorities reported that the current heat wave affecting the country's north has claimed the lives of 9 people. Tamaulipas Health Secretary Vicente Hernandez reported that the 9th death was a man who suffered a heat stroke while working. On the other hand, local media reported that multiple institutions have canceled classes due to the lack of air conditioning service, while several basic services have been failing due to the high temperatures. The head of the Meteorology Department, Jessica Luna Lagunes, explained that June became the hottest month of 2023. Luna also said that this heat wave surpassed the previous historical record of June 1998 at 43.5 degrees Celsius. China's National Observatory on Sunday renewed a yellow alert for high temperatures as heat waves scorched some parts of the country. According to the National Meteorological Center, during daylight hours, temperatures in different provinces, including parts of Inner Mongolia, Beijing, and Yunnan, reached 35 to 36 degrees Celsius. According to the forecast, temperatures in some of these regions will reach 37 to 39 degrees Celsius and may even exceed 40 degrees Celsius in some locations. The Meteorological Center advised avoiding outdoor activities during high-temperature periods in the afternoon and suggested that workers exposed to high temperatures adopt necessary protective measures. China has a 3-color-coded warning system for high temperatures, with red representing the most severe warning, followed by orange and yellow. In the United States, at least 3 people died Sunday and nearly another 12 were injured in several shootings across the country. According to local sources, 2 of the deaths occurred in a camp near the Gorge amphitheater in the state of Washington when, during a music festival, an unidentified individual started shooting at the crowd. Around 3 people were wounded. Meanwhile, in the state of California, at an event at an arts, shopping, and entertainment center in San Diego, a 3rd person was killed and another one is suspected to have been injured. Also in California, outside a party venue in Carson's southern district, 8 people were wounded, 2 of them in critical condition at another shooting. Authorities say the reasons behind those incidents are still unknown and investigations are underway. On Saturday, social movements and research institutions from all around the globe came together to call for a new non-alignment movement at a webinar organized by the No Cold War campaign. The webinar, titled "The New Non-Aligned and the New Cold War," was organized by the International Campaign together with the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research to counteract a new wave of Western Cold War rhetoric which has targeted China as a threat to U.S. declining hegemony. Progressive public figures, researchers, and intellectuals such as Vijay Prashad, director of the Tricontinental German lawmaker Sevit Dakdelan, and former Minister of Intelligence of South Africa, Ronnie Kasrils, came together to exchange their views on the matter. In this context, they highlighted the need for increased global South cooperation in the transition to a multipolar world. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. The Russian Defense Ministry announced that they prevented 2 new attacks by Ukrainian armed forces aimed at the Zaporozhye region. Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov said Ukrainian militants unsuccessfully tried to advance in several waves over 3 areas in the Zaporozhye region. Konashenkov said all enemy attacks were repelled by the Russian Defense Forces and that in these operations 9 tanks, 10 infantry fighting vehicles and up to 10 other armored vehicles were destroyed. On Friday, June 16th, acting Zaporozhye Governor Yevgeny Balitsky announced the unsuccessful attempts by Ukrainian armed forces to break through the defenses on the regional front. In Russia, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Moscow intends to end the war started by Kiev in 2014 against the Donetsk and Lugansk regions of Ukraine. The top Russian official recalled that Donetsk and Lugansk became independent from Ukraine in 2014 after rejecting the coup d'etat that took place in said country. However, at the time, Kiev authorities sent troops to return these territories to the bosom of Ukraine. In this way, Peskov stressed that the hostilities have left over 14,000 dead between 2014 and February 2022, citing the estimated figures of the United Nations. The Russian official recalled that it was this situation that prompted Russia to launch in February 2022 a special military operation in eastern Ukraine with the declared aim of ensuring the security of the populations of Donetsk and Lugansk. And in other declarations made to the press, Peskov also pointed out the negative impact that the European stance on the Ukrainian conflict has had on the German economy, given how its industry relied heavily on Russian gas. Germany is stepping on its own leg and shooting itself in the foot by doing this. We all know that lovely, magical competitiveness of German industry, as it turns out, is largely based on Russian natural gas with its stability and its prices. And now that Germany has been deprived of these competitive advantages, this will have a very negative impact on its economy. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin reaffirmed before the African Peace Delegation the willingness to dialogue with all parties interested in ending the conflict in Ukraine. During a meeting with members of the African Union delegation in St. Petersburg, the president showed a document previously signed with Kiev in Istanbul entitled Treaty of Permanent Neutrality and Security Guarantees of Ukraine, denouncing that it had been subsequently abandoned by Ukraine after its signature. In this regard, Putin pointed out Kiev's unwillingness to reach agreements that would de-escalate the conflict. At the same time, the Russian leader welcomed the balanced approach of African countries towards the Ukrainian crisis and expressed his willingness to hold dialogue in order to achieve peace. On Saturday, U.S. President Joe Biden stated his country would not make any special arrangement for Ukraine to join NATO despite the conflict with Russia. The statement was gathered while Biden was en route to Philadelphia for his 2024 elections campaign, where he was asked whether the U.S. would make it easy for Ukraine to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. In this context, he told reporters that no special arrangements would be made and that Ukraine would have to meet the same standards as any other nation willing to join the international organization. For their part, other NATO member countries such as Spain and Germany have noted that Ukraine's NATO membership is not feasible and would increase the risk of a full and direct military confrontation with Russia. Still, NATO's Secretary General has stated NATO leaders are planning to hold their first meeting with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky in the Lithuanian capital of Vilnius next July. In Kazakhstan, security forces arrested a man who took hostages inside a bank in Astana, the capital of the country. Witnesses say the perpetrator entered the bank with a gun and demanded money be transferred to people in need, while threatening to kill the hostages if his demands were not met. The local police deployed an anti-kidnapping team and cleared the vicinity of the building. The operation ended with the arrest of the suspect with no personal injuries nor damage to property. China's Foreign Minister Qin Gang received U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Beijing on Sunday. According to local media, both diplomats held talks regarding the country's bilateral relations and addressed important international issues of common interest, such as economic cooperation and the conflict in Ukraine. After the meeting, the U.S. State Department released a statement assuring the parties had agreed to meet again soon in Washington as part of the lines of communication that both powers want to keep open. The U.S. Secretary of State arrived in China for a two-day visit on Sunday morning, becoming the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit China since U.S. President Joe Biden began his term in 2021. Blinken was originally scheduled to visit China in February, but abruptly scrapped his plans after the United States protested and later shut down a Chinese research balloon flying over its soil. For his part at their meeting in Beijing, Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang said relations with the U.S. are at its lowest since the establishment of diplomatic relations, in detriment of the fundamental interests and expectations of their peoples and of the international community. In this context, Gang made clear demands on China's core interests and major concerns, including the Taiwan issue. He also said China's policy toward the U.S. has always been stable, guided by principles of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and cooperation, and that the Asian giant is committed to building stable, predictable, and constructive relations with the U.S. The two sides agreed to further exchanges by actively exploring the possibility of increasing passenger flights between the countries, as well as having more students, scholars, and businessmen exchanges. TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, dial 461 and enjoy Latin American alternative broadcasts. One final short break, we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the South. On Sunday, the African Union condemned Saturday's attack on a junior high school in Uganda by an armed group linked to the Islamic State group. 42 people died in the attack. Allegedly, the Allied Democratic Forces militia are the ones responsible for the attack. African Union Commission President Moussa Faki Mahamat described the attack as atrocious and shocking. Mahamat also expressed his condolences to the families and loved ones of the victims and wished a speedy recovery to the wounded students. The African Union Commission President also sent his full solidarity to the Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni and to the Ugandan people. Mahamat further reiterated the need for an urgent holistic regional approach to address the threat posed to regional security by terrorists and armed groups operating from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. On Sunday in Mali, people went to the polls for a constitutional referendum that would reinforce the office of the president. The consultation is part of the transition process pledged to the Economic Community of West African States by the military junta since the start of the coup in August 2022. Around 8.4 million voters were expected to cast their ballots, and according to observers, the vote began on time and it took place under close surveillance by security forces. There was no voting in northern city of Kidal and in Timbuktu, and armed groups had threatened to attack the polling stations. Preliminary results are expected to be announced in 72 hours. Mali's presidential elections are scheduled for February 2024. Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi hosted his Uzbek counterpart Shavkat Mirziyoyev in Tehran and signed a total of 10 cooperation agreements. The Iranian president met his Uzbek counterpart at the Saadabad complex, where they held a private meeting, during which they discussed issues of common interest. The two presidents later participated in the signing ceremony of bilateral cooperation documents between officials of the two countries. Among the agreements reached are the Preferential Trade Agreement and cooperation in the areas of transport and transit, pharmaceuticals, standards and insurance, joint free trade zones, technology, and innovation and agriculture. Mirziyoyev is the first Uzbek president to visit Iran in more than 20 years. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, TeleSURenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.